World War I was not just a conflict between nations. It was a turning point in human history, a moment when the modern world was born through fire, fear, and unimaginable loss. When the war began in 1914, most people believed it would be short. Soldiers marched to the front with confidence, bands played in city squares, and newspapers promised quick victories. 4 years later, Europe was exhausted. Millions were dead, empires had collapsed, and the world would never be the same again. At the heart of World War I was a fragile balance of power. Europe before 1914 looked calm on the surface, but underneath, tensions were growing. Powerful nations competed for colonies, resources, and influence. National pride was intense, and many countries believed war was a way to prove strength. Alliances were formed for protection, but instead of keeping peace, they created a chain reaction that made a small conflict capable of igniting the entire continent. The spark that set everything in motion came on June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a young nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. This single event shocked Europe, but it did not have to lead to a world war. What turned a political crisis into a global conflict was the system of alliances and the unwillingness of leaders to step back. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Russia supported Serbia. Germany supported Austria-Hungary. France and Britain stood by Russia. In just weeks, Europe was at war. Germany launched its war plan with speed and confidence. The Schlieffen Plan aimed to defeat France quickly by invading through Belgium, then turn east to fight Russia. But the plan failed. Belgium resisted, Britain entered the war, and German forces were stopped near the Marne River. What followed was not a war of movement, but a war of trenches. Trench warfare became the symbol of World War I. From the North Sea to the Swiss border, soldiers dug deep into the earth. Life in the trenches was brutal. Mud, rats, disease, and constant fear were part of everyday existence. Soldiers lived inches away from death, listening to artillery fire day and night. Attacks often meant climbing out of the trench and charging into machine gun fire. Gains were measured in meters, while losses were counted in thousands. New weapons made the war even more deadly. Machine guns could cut down waves of soldiers in seconds. Artillery caused most of the casualties, raining shells from miles away. Poison gas was introduced, burning lungs and blinding eyes. Later, tanks appeared, slow and unreliable at first, but a sign of how warfare was changing. Airplanes, once a novelty, became tools for reconnaissance and combat, adding a new dimension to the battlefield. The human cost of the war was overwhelming. Soldiers experienced fear, exhaustion, and trauma on a scale never seen before. Many returned home physically wounded, while others carried invisible scars that would haunt them for life. Civilians also suffered. Cities were bombed, food shortages became common, and entire economies were redirected toward war production. The line between front lines and home fronts began to disappear. While the Western Front dominated headlines, the war was truly global. On the Eastern Front, battles were more fluid but just as deadly. Russia struggled with poor leadership and supply shortages. Millions of soldiers died, and the strain of war helped ignite the Russian Revolution in 1917. The Ottoman Empire fought on multiple fronts, from Gallipoli to the Middle East, while colonial troops from Africa, India, and Asia were drawn into a European war that was not originally theirs. The United States remained neutral for most of the war, watching events unfold from across the Atlantic. However, German submarine attacks on civilian ships and the Zimmermann telegram, which proposed an alliance between Germany and Mexico, pushed the U.S. toward intervention. In 1917, American troops began arriving in Europe. Their fresh manpower and resources gave the Allies new strength at a critical moment. As the war dragged on, morale began to collapse. Soldiers questioned the purpose of endless slaughter. Civilians protested shortages and losses. In 1918, Germany launched a final offensive, hoping to win before American forces fully arrived. The attack failed. Allied counteroffensives pushed German troops back. Exhausted and facing revolution at home, Germany sought an armistice. On November 11, 1918, the guns finally fell silent. World War I was over, but its consequences were only beginning. The Treaty of Versailles punished Germany harshly, taking territory, limiting its military, and demanding massive reparations. Many believed the treaty would ensure peace. In reality, it planted the seeds for future conflict. The war reshaped the world map. Empires that had existed for centuries collapsed. New nations were created, often with unstable borders and unresolved tensions. The League of Nations was formed in hopes of preventing another global war, but it lacked the power and unity needed to succeed. World War I also changed how people viewed war itself. The old idea of glory and honor faded, replaced by disillusionment. Writers, poets, and artists tried to capture the horror and meaninglessness of the conflict. For an entire generation, the war was a defining trauma. In the end, World War I was not just about battles and treaties. It was about human lives caught in forces beyond their control. It showed how quickly progress could turn into destruction and how fragile peace really is. Understanding this war is essential because its legacy shaped the 20th century and continues to influence the world today. World War I stands as a warning from history, a reminder that pride, fear, and silence can lead nations into disaster, and a reminder that the cost of war is never paid only by leaders, but by millions of ordinary people whose lives are changed forever.
Follow for more videos like this.